following show contains adult content. It's not our intent to offend anyone, but we want to inform you that if you are a child under the age of 18 or get offended easily, this next show may not be for you. The content, opinions, and subject matter of these shows are solely the choice of your show hosts and their guests, and not those of the Entertainment Network or any affiliated stations. Any comments or inquiries should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for listening.
Hey everyone, and welcome to 50 Shades of Bullshit. I'm your host, Christine Lalonde, and this is the podcast where we uncover the truth about online dating. Now let's begin. Hey, I'm Christine.
And I'm Janice.
And this is 50 Shades of Bullshit.
Yeah, it is.
Hey, Janice.
Hello. I am dancing back here.
I know.
In the
I love
green
my
room,
song.
loving life.
Bum, bum, bum. My friend Nico made that song for me.
I love it.
I was thinking about the intro, though. I think I need to change it because it's like where we uncover the truth about online dating. But it's not just the truth about online dating. It's about finding yourself and finding love and,
The truth about finding yourself.
Yeah. So it's more than just dating. I thought it was going to be all about dating, and now it's so much more. So hi, thank you for being here, everyone. We're glad you come back and see us every week. Listen to our
I think this is one of the last weeks that we can say Happy New Year.
Yeah.
So one last time.
Happy New Year. Well, it is the Chinese New Year this weekend. So you can say Happy New Year. My boyfriend Christian is half Chinese, and he was like reading what he was and what I am. And I'm the monkey. I'm the year of the monkey. He's the year of
you were born.
The water rat. And I was like, water rat? Ew.
It sounds like Janice's worst nightmare right there. The water rat.
Right?
Oh, dear.
So anyway, how's your week been?
It's been great, most of all because I got to start it with you.
I know.
I woke up in Burbank on Monday morning, went to the airport with my favorite gal pal, and after having a very fun weekend together in Burbank, LA, Hollywood, all of it. Yep, it was great.
We partied and we danced our asses off.
We did, yes.
We had a good time.
It was wonderful. Yeah, a great weekend. Lots of girl talk, lots of supporting our friend, lots of dancing, lots of good times.
Yep, fun stuff. So, this show today, unfortunately, Jada couldn't be here. I know that I sent out the flyer today that Jada was going to be here, but Jada is really sick.
The plague, it's going around.
I know. She has been sick for a while, and she finally said she was going to the doctor. Thank goodness. And so we miss her, but we're happy that she's getting to see the doctor because she's not been getting better. So anyway, so today we are talking about a really interesting subject. I'm not really sure what the heck this is all about. So I'm really excited that Steve is here with us today. So I was looking it up and I had to Google it because I was like, what the heck is this? It's Somatic Sex Education. I guess it's a sex therapy that people undergo with themselves or a partner. And it starts, I guess, with them talking about their problems in which I guess is different than actual sex therapy in a way that I guess it focuses on how they feel in their body.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So we're going to have to find out what the heck that is all about. So let me introduce Steve. So for Embodied Counseling, I can't even read. I can't say it. He does sexy body work. Somatic Sex Education. His name is Steve Oskard. And he, for over 30 years, have been guiding clients to exploring how they hold their life story in their bodies. And he specializes in working with clients that discover how to hold, how we hold shame and trauma inside our bodies. And he then works with and teaches them how to explore touch and movement and dialogue and breath and sound and awareness as a way to find freedom in their sexual expression and in their whole lives. It sounds incredibly fascinating. He works with individuals, couples, groups, and people of all gender expressions and sexual orientations. I love that. He brings play, compassion, and the ability to normalize shame and embarrassment that shapes us and limits our ability to be fulfilled in our daily lives and in relationships. So let's bring on Steve and let's
Yay.
see what the heck this shit's all about. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Christine. Hey, Janice. How are you?
We're
Hello,
good.
friend.
I
Thank
think
you.
I think the words I used in my bio were just too big. It was just a mouthful.
It
Well,
was a
we
lot.
have a lot to talk about.
What the actual fuck is that word? It's
I think I hope it's
sexological. Sexological?
sexological body work.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Well, the basic premise of sexological body work and also somatic work is teaching people to tune into their bodies and actually listen to the wisdom that we have. And
Okay.
we're very disconnected. We're very much in our heads, even when it comes to one of the most embodied things, sex. We're
Okay.
disconnected. We're performative. We're, following a script of what we thought was pleasurable in our youth when we first discovered how to please ourselves. And then we map that on to our relationships with partners. So we have a very narrow path about how we reach pleasure and how do we engage in pleasure. And rather than this open exploration where we can actually learn and discover new things all the time,
Mm,
kind of like
okay.
going to your favorite restaurant, ordering the same meal every time when there's this rich group of selections that you could have and that you could try, but you keep sticking with the same thing. Like what if our erotic experience was this huge, vast exploration and not just this narrow pathway to pleasure that we call orgasm?
Wow. Okay. So do you work with couples who and people who have like issues, they're stuck in a rut and they need help moving forward?
Yes. So I work with couples who are having challenges with their connection. I work with people who are having difficulty with arousal, people with difficulty with erectile issues, getting and maintaining an erection for men, women having difficulty with experiencing arousal and actually knowing and appreciating their own arousal cycle. Couples when there's a mismatch in desire, a mismatch in that arousal cycle. Individuals who feel disconnected from their own bodies. So most of my clients, well, actually, there's a wide range. There are people who are dealing with specific things that they know are real challenges for them, and they come in and they say, I say, what do you want to work on? And they know exactly what it is. All the way to people who already have these rich experiences and great sex and a great exploration, and they just want to expand their capacity to experience pleasure. So there's a real spectrum of people. But here's the funny thing that I find with whether I'm working with an individual or a couple or groups of people, that what I find is so much of our sexual experience and expression has very little to do with sex itself. There's so layered.
It's psychological.
Yeah. And about
Yeah.
communication and connection.
I love that. So when you go to help people, do you guys just sit there and chit chat about it, or
This
do
is
you
what I
do
want to know
like,
too. What
do you
happened?
do things? I mean, do they explore their bodies in front of you and their partner? I mean,
Aw.
what the heck? I don't. Well, there's
Yeah.
the om. The om has a woman lay there with her feet together and her knees out, and the
Yes,
man
it does.
gives her sensations for her pleasure to give her
Well,
an
it's the
orgasm.
stroker, not necessarily the man. It's whoever's stroking.
Whatever. I'm straight, so I
You
think
still get
male.
stroked by a woman.
No thanks. So Steve, tell us how this process works. I'm
Yeah.
really
So
fascinated.
it can be all dialogue. It could be just like going to a therapist or going to someone and you talk. That's a limited way. We sometimes explore that. Sometimes the whole session is talking, but it can also include all kinds of touch and movement and breath work and sound and engaging somatically. And that's what I mean by somatically. You're actually tuning into your whole body and the whole way we move. And it could even include erotic touch, self-touch, coaching people, masturbation coaching, how to touch your partner. I might send people home to do homework, and we might even do some touch-based work in our sessions that are live and in person.
Okay.
In
Okay.
fact, you mentioned OM or orgasmic meditation. That's a small exercise or piece that I often use with people as a way to learn and a way to tune into themselves and connect.
Are you talking to people? Are you trying to find the root of maybe what someone's issue is? Maybe someone had been, inappropriately touched as a child, or maybe they have had an instance of rape or some kind of trauma. Do you go into that type of thing?
Yeah, and there is some overlap in terms of what people might do with the therapist or with a sex therapist. So we might address people's traumas and their history and the exploration of their sexual history. That might be part of it. But one of the things I really try to work with is moving away from the problem solution model and moving into a learning and an exploration model. It's completely different. So if you
Yeah, I
have a
can see
problem,
that.
you're focusing on the problem, and there's this cloud of what's wrong here. You're
Okay.
kind of in the rainstorm underneath the cloud of there's something wrong and I need to fix it. So you're constantly going to be looking for solutions rather than I've got this body here. What can I learn about it?
That's
And
cool.
and I've got this partner. And how can I learn to ask them what they want? And how can I tell them what I want? And how can we play and learn? Because when we learn as children, it's play. It's kind of free form and kind of it's all filled with wonder. But when it comes to sex and when we reach our preteen years, our teen years, some of us earlier, some of us later, and we make that connection, because listen, children and infants touch their genitals and it's stimulating them and it feels good. But it's not the same as when we reach this point around our adolescence that we connected to, oh, this is sex. Oh, this is what, we might not understand it fully, but it's almost like it's pre-sexual before that time. And then it's like we make some kind of connection, even if it's before we understand what climax is or we've reached that experience. There's something different that shifts. But already when we reach that point, there's already, for most of us, not everyone, but for most of us, there's this shame that's already there. We've already learned in that pre-sexual stage, oh, don't touch yourself, or that's private. Don't let anyone else touch you there, which all important lessons to learn.
Right.
But it already inserts this kind of cloak of shame so that when we do start to explore, we're not free. When we learn about climax or orgasm, it's usually quickly and quietly. And how do I hide this?
Right.
So what if we could revisit that experience and slow down and have fun and play a little bit and explore?
Do you find that you get more people who are having issues individually who come to see you, or do you get more couples? Do you do a lot of group sessions?
I don't do a lot with groups right now. And by groups, it's a very different experience, but there's a lot of group experiences and a lot of people out there in the world of Tantra and somatic sex education might do group experiences. Some of them are less sexually oriented and some of them have more of a sexual component to it. But there can definitely be an erotic somatic experience that's not about sex. And then there's, of course, sex parties.
Yeah.
But most of my work now is with individuals and couples. It's about 50-50.
Okay. Now I know that you were on Janice's show recently, X-Files. What were you, what's some of the things that you found, Janice, that were a highlight that we could
Yes,
talk
I'd love
about
to
today?
talk about this. I think that for me and for a lot of the people who listen, it means not having orgasm as the goal and not having really any objective other than enjoying the moment. And I know for me and for I think other people, I often get really in my head about, the climax, about what I perceive as the goal. both because I want to be performative and please my partner, but also because of what my partner may be bringing to the table. And that is, I'm going to give you this thing. And this is probably what many men have been maybe socialized to do. But I know that I had just many, many, many years of going into experiences with the expectation that this thing was going to happen, and it made me less able to just enjoy the moment. And I know that that's something that Steve teaches people or teaches people to appreciate more, and I appreciated learning about that from you.
Yeah, I think,
No, go ahead, Steve.
if I may, I think one of the most useful, when it comes to tips and tricks, the most useful tip or trick that I tell people is slow down. Slow down.
I think you're right. I think a lot of people, not a lot, most people, when they come into the age of where they're exploring sex and being with a partner, not just with a partner, but with themselves, it's like you said, a goal. You have like
Exactly.
you have to reach this orgasm, and then it's like, oh, what do I have to do for him? What does he have to do for me? Or vice versa, a man with a man or a woman with a woman or whatever you so choose to be with. But it's almost like, like you said, a performance thing. It's like, I have to say that I think most of my life, my adult life, when I have explored being intimate with somebody, it is all about, ooh, let's see if we have this big, moment.
Right.
And it was all about the sex, the physical. And I've really come in to myself, I think, sexually with my partner, with myself. It's about the just feeling the moment, the connection between us, taking our time. It's not about whether we have an orgasm or have a completion. It's just feeling, it's like feeling what is coming up at that time for
Because
us.
if the goal is the orgasm, then you're only looking towards the goal. You're not looking at, like, I'm thinking of like an actual car right now. And if you're thinking of, this is my goal, then you're just thinking like, when am I going to get there? What are the mile signs? Instead of just looking out the window and just seeing all the beautiful scenery around you. And for me, that was how I was kind of brought up. I didn't lose my virginity until I was 19.
Yeah,
and then
me too.
at that point, it was very much, like, I'm going to give this to you. And I remember having so many partners who said, I'm going to make you come. I was like, oh, okay. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And now it's like, there's this expectation that we're trying to get towards, rather than just, I'm going to make you have a nice moment. I'm going to, I'll provide the space for, a nice night. Instead, it was always just this, sport event that I found myself in the middle of.
Yeah. And so much of our language is organized around that too. And in that context, somebody else is responsible for my pleasure.
Exactly.
And
totally. And so I don't want to let him down, because he's saying he's going to give me this and I will make you. And I mean, it sounds good to me, but
that's all about him showing how good he is.
So true. So true. Yes. And actually, go ahead.
We're trained that way. Like, I've got to be good. I've got to be a good lover. And there's women's version of, of course, we're talking in the heteronormative context, and I work with, people who are gay and lesbian, bisexual.
Yeah.
We're all trained that way. There's a performative aspect to it. But what if I'm responsible for my pleasure? That means knowing what feels good to me now, not yesterday. Like, yesterday, I know it felt good. But what does my body want right now? Like, one of the exercises I do with people is asking them to really tune in to your body. Like, how might you like to be touched right now? Like, right now, well, if I've been sitting all morning, been doing sessions on Zoom all morning, it's like, gosh, my low back is a little sore. I bet if I lied on my stomach and you took your elbow and you got it, not the point of your elbow, that flat part of your elbow, you just kind of leaned it. So I'm actually expressing something with a lot of language that addresses how I'm feeling right now in my body. And I can only do that if I tune in right now. Now,
Gotcha.
2 minutes from now, I might want something different.
And
So
it
if
might not be sex at all. I mean, sometimes, people who work from home, I'm like, I would really love to just be taken out for a drink and a change of environment and not have to think about anything. And then, having been relaxed, then coming back and then enjoying the moment together rather than all of this orgasm focus.
Yeah. And if I can learn to say what I want right now and ask you for it, and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm a yes to that. And together we arrive at this place of consent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big word. And I think a lot of people think it means permission.
Mm.
But it's really much more nuanced than that. Consent is a dialogue that's ongoing. It's like, what do you want? And I actually look, what do I want right now? And I ask for it, and I find the words, and then you say, yeah, I want this. And then we find a way to actually find something. That way, I'm responsible for my experience, whether it's sexually or going to dinner. You're responsible for your experience, and then we're coming together to share that. So
I see
back
that.
to a sexual context, if I can ask for exactly what I want, and you ask for what you want, and there might not be a match. I might say, hey, I want to have sex, and you're like, God, I want to read a book.
Yeah, so actually, I think that this is where a lot of the confusion lies. And I just finished reading The Pleasure Gap, which I absolutely loved. And I think that some of the problem that busy women feel these days is that it's not really a matter of tell me what you want, let's just sit in the moment. It's a matter of feeling like you don't want anything. And so I am sure that you have female identified customers.
Clients.
Who are coming to you with this exact issue, just feeling like my desire is turned off. And even if I was on the beach having a beautiful night, a beautiful vacation, and feeling very safe and secure with my partner, I would still say, I just don't know. I can't access that part of myself right now. So what would you say to that?
Well, here's what I say. We always want something.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I want you to leave me alone. Even if I want to go read my book, like I said before, even if I want to go for a walk by myself, even if it doesn't include my partner, we always can identify something that I do want. But we're trained to focus on what I don't want, what's not working, what's wrong. You never do this to me. You never do this. We are immersed in complaints, not just sexually and not just with our partners, but in the world. We talk about what we don't want rather than, I want a hamburger. Like, what do I want right now in this moment? That embodiment is bringing mindfulness to the sensate experience. In this moment, right now, what do I want? I want to take a nap. I want to.
That's all you ever want.
I keep talking about.
Well, and this is not my problem, I assure you. I just know that it is a very prevalent thing.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, I talk about this a lot on the show. It goes to my life teachings, what I talk about, what I try to adapt for my own life. And it was when I started turning things around and only talking about the things I want, never the things I didn't want. Never acknowledge those, because I am a manifester. I believe in manifesting. I believe in what you speak will come, and your mind doesn't know what's real and what's not real. So when you're constantly saying, oh, I don't want a guy who doesn't give me an orgasm, you're going to get a guy who never gives you an orgasm. Or I don't want a guy who isn't touchy-feely. You're going to get a guy who doesn't want to touch.
Well, this is why the orgasmic meditation is so effective, is because you learn, as the person being stroked, to only voice what you want and to only give adjustments based on what the person can do to give you more of it. And that's why, it's so powerful for so many people.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. It's a great tool. And for you, Christine, I would ask, do you get what you want?
Now.
Good. And now,
because I'm focusing on only what I want and not what I don't. Yeah.
And then you might look at, well, now what? And now what? And now what do I want? And what's next, so that you expand your experience of allowing and wanting and creating in every moment by moment by moment. So it's not just, what do I want? And then you get what you get. but that, Janice used the word adjustment, that you're constantly in real time present to what you feel in your body. Your body's billions of neurons feeding information through your nervous system to your brain. And if something's even slightly off, you can actually adjust and ask for something different. A lot of the work that I do with people is in the realm of self-pleasure, because
Okay.
we don't know
Yes, let's go here.
yeah. What I was going to say is, if we don't know our own bodies, how do we actually know what we want?
Yeah. I do believe that until okay, so my daughter's in the next room. She's probably going to kill me for saying this out loud. But not too long ago, I went in, I was talking to her, and I was sitting in her room. She was 15 at the time. She's 16 now. And I said to her, we were talking about sex, and I said, you will never know what fulfills you in a sexual partner until you know what pleasures you personally. So you have to explore your own body to know what you want and to know what makes you happy and what you desire, because then it makes you able to communicate to the person that you're with what it is you need and want. And so I said, you got to explore your own space, your own time, your own thing, your own body, because without that, you can't, you're with a partner and you don't know what you want. You don't know what brings you pleasure. He's like, oh, what can I do for you? What do you want? You don't know.
Tell me what you like.
Tell me what you really, really want. You did say something a minute ago that really clicked for me. You said something about, oh gosh, and I think I'm losing it. Oh God, I cannot remember what you said. But it made me think about in the past 90% of my life, when I'm with a sexual partner and we are in the moment, I am faking 90% of it because none of it is giving me pleasure. Anything he does is not working and it's not getting me there. I might be turned on beforehand, but then the minute we start to have sex, it's gone. It's like, oh my God, I just got to fucking fake this to get it over with. And a lot of it has been me faking so that he will get off and then it's done. And I think for me, when I finally realized, like, I would allow myself to think about the fact that I was sexually molested up until I left home, that shame had a lot to do with it. Just being with somebody to be with somebody, not with somebody I actually gave a shit about. And when that clicked in my head, then it really started to change for me. I started thinking about what pleased me, what did I want, what was feeling good for me. And when I started focusing on my own, just like in a relationship, if you're focusing on your own needs, I felt that I could give better. When I am accepting that I'm having a good time, it allowed me to think, oh, okay, we're both having a good time. We're both feeling something. It's completely different for me now. I'm more in the moment. I'm more into not being ashamed of my body or my sexuality or what feels good and what doesn't feel good. I don't have the same association with sex as I used to. It took a lot of freaking work. A lot. So do you work with people on that kind of thing? Like getting past and really thinking about those kind of connection moments?
I do quite a bit. A lot of it can be an exploration of our history and the conclusions we came to about ourselves, about life and our bodies and what feels good and what doesn't. You described trauma, and I have a particular way that I work with trauma, and I'm not a trauma therapist. I don't specialize in working with trauma, but it always comes up for people.
Yeah.
And I have my own definition for what I consider trauma. It is too much, too fast, unwelcomed, without agreement or consent, plus a story. So any one or more of those can be held as trauma in our bodies. You could even never have had the experience yourself, but you saw it. You saw it in a movie, and then you're playing this story in your thoughts, and that could be traumatic for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You may have never been touched, but you heard the story about the next door neighbor who was raped, and that is stuck with you, and that's traumatic. Or you had some experience that was really painful and traumatic, and that you store in your body, and then you have this story that shouldn't have been. That was painful, and we add to the story, and then there's a tremendous amount of agreement in the world when people talk about trauma. And there's great healing work being done now, but I think we have trauma about our trauma.
Yeah.
We have drama about our trauma too.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is?
Because of the story.
Mm-hmm.
That last piece of it is we tell the story over and over again, but it doesn't get complete for us. It doesn't get resolved. We don't let it go. We keep holding it.
Yeah.
And do you think that sex or self-pleasure even can be a way to let it go, or a way to process
Absolutely.
the things from our past?
Sure. And it can also re-traumatize us. So
interesting.
The context of healing can be incredibly powerful, but the wrong context could re-traumatize us and reinforce the thoughts and the beliefs that we had at the time that it originally we experienced it. So it's something very delicate, and we're in our culture nowadays is speaking so much about trauma. I think it's amazing that it's coming to the surface, and there's so many leading voices in it. And it also can be over dramatized, because now people are talking about their trauma.
That's what I was hoping that you were going to get to, actually, is like, what are maybe some of the consequences of this, not overemphasis, but this new emphasis on our trauma?
Yeah, I think there's an empowering way to begin to release and speak about it. And there's some somatic work that people can do to tune into our pain and experience it in a way that is safe. And then there's a way to talk about it at a distance, like it's this thing that happened to the neighbor, and it's really living in our body somehow. So we can talk about it, but not. And the old model of trauma was something called exposure therapy. That's an old model where you face your fears, kind of thing. Now that's a overgeneralization of it. But that was the old model, and they're seeing that model really traumatized people in many, many ways, and it worked for some people.
Yeah.
But there's also, I'll be speaking 1 second, there's also talking about it and keeping myself so detached from my experience that I don't allow it to unfold. And I talk about trauma kind of like a tangled ball of yarn, where we're just going to pull on some threads and see which one loosens up. And that's the one that we can be curious about. And we can allow ourselves to lean in just a little bit and let ourselves feel what the power of that pain and that shame. And then the one we pull on that's snagged, okay, we don't go there. We just let that one be.
Interesting. I found for me therapy, talking over and over and over about it constantly, was like so fucking heavy. It just constantly made me feel like shit all the time. It's like reminding me. It was never like, just let it go. And it was when I did my own work on releasing it that it didn't serve me anymore. That it wasn't necessary to talk about it all the time, to feel it all the time, to experience it in my head all the time. Just learning to let it go. It doesn't serve me. It's not happening to me now. It happened to me in the past, and I've learned and grown from it, and letting it go. So that for me has worked. I hope that, for me, I think that that's the best way to deal with most of that, is by learning what helps you release it. So
well, and I think sometimes too that we're trying to process these things and go through them with other people, when we're really well served to kind of take a time out and do some of these things on our own before, we welcome new people into our life. Because that's when so often, especially when it comes to sex and triggers, that these unexpected things happen, because we think that human connection and sexuality and having these experiences is going to make us feel better. But then when it comes down to us, before we know it, it's like trigger city. And there's a lot that you can actually do as a single person to sort through these things, to process these things before you get to that point, and maybe re-traumatize yourself or make things worse by adding someone else into the mix before you're really quote unquote ready.
Yeah.
And how do we know? I'm not too sure, but I do think that so often we use other people as a Band-Aid, and maybe that, we should encourage people not to do that.
Yeah. And I think back to what we were talking about before of goal-oriented experiences.
Yes.
Goal-oriented sex, or I also call it gratification-based sex. Reaching for climax, reaching for stimulation. It keeps us reaching for more and more stimulation and faster and more. It's all goal-oriented. That I call gratification-based rather than truly fulfillment. And I had somebody come in this week, and there was a man who shared about, and we've been working on Zoom together for several weeks, and he talked about his sex life. It was all gratification based. And he came into the office, and you might see behind me, I have a massage table here, and I had him get on the table, and he was fully clothed, and I covered him with a blanket, and I asked him to share about what he was struggling with and what we had been talking about even in our Zoom calls. And I said, "May I put my hand on your heart?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And he's kind of talking and disconnected, and then he stopped and he started to cry. I get choked up when I share this. And he said, "I've never been touched before."
Wow.
Someone who had sex and been sexual and been touched, but he'd never been touched before.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And what did he mean? What did he mean by that? Exactly.
He just let himself feel my hand on his heart.
For me, I saw that as someone who was selflessly just comforting him, making him feel safe, and touching him non-sexually in a way that made him feel like so much emotion that he was able to like realize, whoa, it's not about having to touch somebody in a sexual way to try to me, that feels like someone's trying to find that connection, trying to feel a deeper feeling, and I have to admit, I was the same way. I was blowing through sex and thinking that I was going to find that release and that pleasure and that feeling that someone's just laying their hand on my heart, like you said,
and not asking for anything.
And here's something really interesting. When you shared your interpretation of it, you got something for yourself. And when I experienced him saying that, I got something for myself. But what was of most value is his choice of words, what it meant to him, and how that got installed in his body and without words, the experience of being touched.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We can theorize about it, and we can be touched ourselves by that. But something landed in him that's beyond words. The words he chose were really touching to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, saying that you've never been touched when obviously you've like literally been touched.
Yeah.
And so for him to put it in those words, that's so profound.
It is.
It's making me think, like how can we as partners come into our own experiences with other people with a lack of expectation? Because I think that that's maybe what you brought to it, and that was a beautiful thing for him. And I'm just thinking for myself, what energy do I bring in to sexual encounters or pleasure encounters that maybe I could do differently?
With my partner now, my boyfriend, he said something one time when we first started seeing each other again. And I don't know if you know the story, Steve. I saw him
Well, he was
years
at our
ago.
party. Steve
Yeah, he
knows
was
the
at our
story.
party. So when we reconnected, he made a comment to me one time. He said, "I really love how you lean into me." And I was like, "Huh?" And he said, "You do this thing where your head just leans against my chest and you just lean on me." And he's like, "It's so, for me it's really profound because you're showing me that you I he goes, I feel like you're trusting me. I feel like you're safe with me." And I said, "That's exactly how I feel when I do that." It is a non-sexual thing, but it's sexually charging for both of us in a different way, that we have connected on a more emotional level. And sex for us isn't gratification destination anymore. It is completely in the moment, just grounding ourselves, just, holding each other, looking at each other. It's a very basic, more incredibly intense than any sex I've ever had. So I think, is that kind of what you're saying, that when you're doing with somatic sex therapy, that you're connecting in ways that may not even be sexual, that may be giving you such intense pleasure? I have to say, it's more pleasure with how I'm experiencing these things with him in than any orgasm I ever had with anybody in my life.
What does that mean to you? Like, what does pleasure mean to you?
It's a sense of warmth and heat and safety and strength. I'm protected. I feel incredibly safe. That to me is uh, more valuable than having sex with 50 guys and maybe having an orgasm or two. Where before that was more important to me. Just getting, just having a lot of sex, because then I could prove to myself that I'm not damaged. But you know what I mean? It's a lot more, it feels a lot safer and warmer and fulfilling. So,
And yes. So to answer your question, yes, that
mm,
there's some connection there that really is beyond words, and we can find words to describe it and talk about it.
mhm,
But somatic, we didn't always use that word. When I
Very
started
true.
using doing body work, it was the body mind connection, or what, I don't know what they called it, but somatic work, it means of the body. The body has its own language, and the word body language is sometimes something people use, but that almost minimizes it. There's some communication that happens when you lean into him.
mhm, mhm.
That there's a complete communication separate from verbal, separate from your words,
Yeah.
that he receives in his body.
Mm, mhm.
It's kind of like, if we use an opposite kind of example on the other end of the spectrum, you know how when somebody walks into the room and they're frantic, you could feel it,
Mhm,
and everybody in the room reacts.
mhm.
We're attuned to that. If there's some emergency around, sound and people's movement and how they are in their body communicates something that's beyond words. And then there's this dance, this interplay between our verbal words, our verbal language, and the somatic experience of being in our
Mm,
bodies, and and the dance between the two. How do I find language in words that expresses the language of touch and feeling and embodiment, what we might call embodiment?
hmm.
And what a wonderful exploration. What I was saying when I put my hand on his heart, without words, what I was saying is, you're loved.
Mm,
I
mhm,
love you, or I got you.
mhm.
Whatever it was, the words I might use to say it is, I was communicating that, and he got what he got. He got touched, and he said, I've never been touched. So he's never felt that before,
Mm.
and he was touched by it, and he was moved to tears.
I love that.
And I wish
That's
that
were
for all.
we. And I really love how we each had this own, like, oh, what can I say about it? What does this mean about me and my experience? And
Yeah.
it's so true. Like, this is what we bring into our encounters is what does this mean about me? And what does this say about about how I'm showing up, rather than us just saying, why don't we just let this man have his experience and let Steve tell us about it and just sit with it and recognize it and appreciate it, rather than jumping in there the way that we were, both very compelled to do. I mean, not that this is necessarily the problem, but this is just like how we make situations out to be when it comes to other people. And when it comes to other people and wanting to share something profound with them, we want to really insert ourselves into it rather than creating the safe space for the other person to have an experience with no agenda or outcome.
Yeah. And if I came to this show and we talked about sex and all the exciting parts about sex, and I know we have a few minutes left, so I don't want to avoid talking about some kinky stuff because we could do that too. But if I only came to this conversation and we were conceptualized about sex, or we were talking about all the titillating stuff, and I didn't mean to share that story. That's the one that just popped into my head. But it left you with an experience, and hopefully with the people who are listening, you had an experience of like, oh, I can feel that in my body. When Steve told that story of that man, I felt something. Then this would have been just if I didn't share that or some story like that I'm so blessed to be a witness to over and over and over again, that touching experience. This would be just another podcast. There's some fun, entertaining podcasts out there.
Yeah.
But I really want to be the kind of person that, delivers an experience. Whether I'm working with someone one-on-one or I'm on someone's podcast, I want to touch the soul of people.
You can come and give me a session and we can broadcast it on X-Files. I come to LA now here and there, and I'm happy, if you just want to let me have my experience.
I love it.
Well, we may have another show to talk about.
How long have you been doing this, Steve?
I've been practicing somatic work for over 30 years.
Wow.
But the part about sex really came when I wanted to explore my own shame.
Okay.
And I thought, where do I have the most shame? And it was really in sex. So I got trained as a sex and relationships coach first, and then a somatic sex educator, and then a sexological body worker and embodied counselor. So it's kind of an integration of all these different pieces. And I just want to really touch, and we don't have to talk much about this, but it might sound like I'm all about the spiritual, more deep emotional aspects of sex, but there's a whole range. And so there's so much talk about people exploring kink nowadays that, I want to say I love that too, because it gives people access to a whole range of experience too, including healing. And kink can be very healing for people as well. So
Christine did an episode on it a few weeks ago.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
awesome.
Kink 101. I've talked a lot about kink on here. I've had a lot of different women come on and talk about, sex toys and exploring your body and how important, knowing what you need within your own body, and then also, healing through that, and Kink 101 about, different avenues of kink that, brings you joy, because kink isn't just about getting off. It's about having a real joy and fun. Yeah, it's an expression. It really is. And I love that.
And it's one flavor of many.
Yeah.
And even though
I
most
just want to
people
say
talk
one
about
thing.
What's that?
I just want to say one thing. So I am like, one of my ambitions in life is that Steve becomes my mentor. And I just
that's funny. I love it.
Go ahead. Back to you.
I love that.
I love it.
I'm not kidding. I'm like, really, I'm like, if anyone could be my mentor.
Well, I'd love to learn more about this, Steve. Maybe there's other avenues of somatic sex that education or therapy that we can actually talk about, we'll have you back on the show and we'll explore other avenues. But we're almost out of time, and it always flies by really fast when we have a great guest. When it's guests that are like killing me, I'm like, oh my God, I got another 20 minutes. What am I going to talk about?
Killing you softly or killing you
Softly.
hardly?
Yeah. Hey, Brian. Brian loves the hair. Woo!
I'm letting my hair grow. Thanks, Brian.
Brian's come on the show several times. He is the man. We love it. Well, I've only got about 20 seconds left, so I just want to say, first of all, Janice, thank you for coming on and doing the show with me today. I always love having you as a co-host. Steve, I'm definitely going to have you back. We should talk again about what other parts that we didn't touch on today that we can touch on again. And everyone who comes on and listens to the show and comes and makes comments and enjoys this, thank you so much for listening. And until next week, which is same time, same place, let's just keep this shit real.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share with your friends, like and follow us on Instagram at 50 Shades of _bullshit and Facebook at 50 Shades of Bullshit. Thanks so much for listening, and we really hope to see you again next week.